Hi guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring the legendary warriors Stormrunner on our left, in charge of the forces of the Empire, who have marched to Gorgazan to take on the Priest of Judas and his undeadly Tomb King hordes. Should be a really fun matchup. Both builds have some pretty cool units in them, so let's hop in here and have a little look at the builds. So on either flank here for this Empire formation, we have some halberdiers. Now, they were the main focus of one of my previous videos, so I'm not going to go into them too much, but great anti-large charge defense against large foes units, and they're going to be supporting some spearmen who are dotted along the front line in a rather diamond situation for the formation here, which I like quite a lot. It does kind of force your opponent to push wide a little bit further than they would like, and buys you some time to help protect that back line. So spearmen, cheap, cheerful, here to hold the line and to do a little bit of anti-large damage while they're at it. They're going to be supported, though, by some of the bravest heroes in the Empire ranks. We have an Arch-Lector leading this force today, an absolute badass wielding 2 hammers whilst riding horseback. That's some pretty impressive stuff. And of course, he's coming in with Grand Soulfire, Grand Shield of Faith, as well as the Mace here, which is actually a really nice item I don't see too many people take. It does imbue him with fire damage and turns him into an absolute lawnmower, with that plus 60% base weapon damage. Of course, fire damage very good against all undead foes, including the Tomb Kings, so I really like that toolkit there for him. And Arch-Lector is someone I think a lot more Empire players should bring. They have a load of good legendary lore, so I kind of understand why you don't see him terribly often. He's also going to be supported by a fellow priest, a warrior priest, who's going to be bringing all his own buffs as well here, as the Banner of Eternal Flame, giving fire damage to all nearby troops, and plus that 8% base weapon damage is really going to help these spearmen punch above their weight. But I believe that fire damage does also cut across to the range units as well. So Warrior Priest, pretty good in this matchup in my opinion. Now in the central pocket, we do have the range elements of this Empire build. We have the Silver Bullets, Regiment of Renowned Handgunners, who are really potent and deadly, and another unit of handgunners. And all 2 units is all you really need, as long as you can protect them. If they're pouring fire into key targets, they're easily going to make their value. We have the Hammer of Witches here as well, the Regiment of Renowned Great Cannon supported by some spearmen, and then a big old fat cavalry contingent, who are going to be escorting a Bright Wizard, who's pretty key in this engagement as well. Burning Head, Flaming Sword of Ruin, Fireball, all very potent and deadly, up against the Tomb Kings. We have some Empire Knights who are going to be in charge of bodyguarding him, and double Outriders with grenade launchers. If these guys are allowed to fire throughout the course of a battle, they will tear apart infantry corps. However, they are a little bit trickier to use than your average skirmish cavalry, because they cannot fire 360. Now for the force of the Tomb King, we have some carrying up over on this flank, just searching high and wide, looking to dart into precious kind of squishy Empire units when they get the opportunity. We have W Shopti Greatbows, who are currently taking losses to that Great Cannon. Shoptis do have, of course, have worse range than cannon, but once they get into range, they should be able to trade relatively effectively. Now for the front line, it's kind of what you expect from Tomb Kings. We have really cheap skeleton spearmen, again just here to hold the line, bog down the enemy and try and grind them down. But in the central pocket, we do have some Nekaharian warriors, and they're backed up by the Kepper Guard, Regiment of Renowned Tomb Guard. And I like having a little bit more kind of punch in the central of your force, especially when you're going for mainly chaff, as it really can take your opponent off guard, and these troops help the spearmen out quite a lot if you saturate on top of them. We do have 1 unit of the Necropolis Knights with halberds. These guys incredibly good up against knights, which the Empire always bring. They can always help drag down Karl Franz and other big nasty creatures that occasionally you'll see from the Empire. Now we do have double Nekaharian horsemen as well, 1 on either flank. These guys will be trying to counter skirmish the enemy and whip in and get behind those flanks, or chase down broken and routing troops. We have a Tomb Prince on a chariot, looking rather ferocious and evil here. Also a little bit regal, but coming in with Tomb Strike, the Curse, which is really, really fantastic. That when he takes a huge amount of damage, he rampages everyone around him and lowers their melee attack. And he's coming in with Guardian, of course. And who's he guarding? Arkan the Black, who's just stunting on this poor little Tomb Prince. Like, yeah, you have a chariot, but I have a flying chariot. He's coming with all the usual stuff, the Tomb Blade of Arkham, Sarf Nagash, and the Liber Mortis. I basically never see Arkham without these. And for spell-wise, he is going to be coming with the Fate of Buna, Spirit Leech, as well as My Will Be Done, and the Curse. So pretty cool stuff all round. Let's see how this battle does unfold. Now, the Shopsy taking some pretty big hits straight out of the gate. The Great Cannon having a whale of a time so far. Looks like it's managed to kill 3 models already, which is a decent amount of the damage output of these guys taken away from them from the get-go. So a good start here for the Empire, as more cannon shots rain in, slaying yet another model. But once they are in range, they will do a good job of taking down the Hammer of Witches. We'll have to see as well if any Spirit Leeches do get dropped on them to try and help them finish them off a little bit quicker. Warrior Priest does lead a bit of a sally on this right-hand side with the Halberdiers support, pushing away these characters, keeping them away a little while longer, and driving them away from the main Empire force. But the Great Cannon, looks like one of their pieces has now exploded, which is certainly not good news for them. And they are now starting to lose that trade after some initial really good damage on top of the Ushopti. But yeah, this cannon not going to last terribly long. Outriders are a little bit dawdling at the back here, trying to just figure out which way they're going to go. Looks like they are going to go down the gullet, which is a really good way of using them. They're pretty safe and hidden amongst your own troops, and you can just pound down their enemy front line as it does start to approach it. Now, it looks like the characters really want to whip around to this flank and get in on top of the handgunners, although they probably don't know the silver bullets are here. Karen do drop down as well to try and hammer the Hammer of Witches, but instead receive a big fat charge from Empire Knights, as well as a load of handgunner shots. So in come the grenade launchers, cobing up and over top here of the Knights, and they're just decimating these Nekaharian warriors. Already lost a significant amount of HP there just from one volley. However, that has opened up the Knights to push through the centre here, and they are starting to drive backwards onto the Outriders. The handgunners need to turn and fire where possible. Arkan the Black is now surrounded by Empire Knights himself, and he's an okay melee combatant. He is more of a spell caster, but still, he should be able to hold himself up against Empire Knights, who don't have the greatest melee stats themselves, although Halberdiers are starting to come in to do a nice little pincer movement and surround Arkan for good. The front line is well and truly engaged at this point, as the undead hordes batter against the shield wall of the Empire, as all kinds of monstrosities are starting to push through. Outriders with grenade launchers have found themselves a little bit caught here, as they've had to pull out their swords and engage in glorious hand-to-hand combat. But certainly not where they want to be. They're going to want to pull back and start raining more shots in, but looks like they've been a little bit cheeky trying to get some shots on the Kepper Guard. Now, it looks like the Hammer of Witches is completely out of artillery pieces at this point, but that's not going to stop you Ushopti from finishing them off and firing in a few more shots as well. The Empire Knights are slowly going down here, but that pinning on Arkan's been really key here. The Archlector has got engaged as well, and especially with that fire damage popping in, he's going to be able to slaughter Arkan quite comfortably, especially with the Hammer of Sigmar popped on him as well. Although a lot of the Empire forces have started to break and run for the hills at this point. Spearmen, cannon crews, even the Outriders have all started to pull back. Basically, wherever there's not a priest preaching the good word of Sigmar, the men of the Empire do struggle. More Tomb Prince action here as he dives in. And it looks like they are managing to rear up the Archlector's horse, but with the mace popped, this Tomb Prince needs to be careful. Yes, he's a pretty decent combatant, but when he's on his chariot, he is not anti-large, he's anti-infantry, so he's certainly going to be losing this fight and needs to whittle away as quickly as possible. Spearmen slowly winning this engagement up against the Skeleton Spearmen, dragging them down relatively well, although I suppose on this trade it is going Tomb King favour. Ushopti's still alive and active, which is pretty good for them. It looks like they are going to be able to use the majority of their ammunition despite that early pressure coming on them. And one unit of the handgunners, which is the Silver Bullets no less, have been compromised by the Kepper Guard. But Outriders with grenade launchers are going to be shooting in, getting some glorious value on these undeadly horrors here. In the distance, the Bright Wizard is darting back and forth, desperately trying to zigzag away from Arkan and allow the Spearman and Warrior Priest to come in and intercept. Looks like he's going to be able to at least drive him away, and having the Bright Wizard back is pretty huge. 1 or 2 fireballs into Arkan at this point probably would finish him off, and just as I say that, it looks like he's going to load up a fat fireball. He goes down range and does clip one of the ties, but Liber Mortis was indeed popped as well, giving him that nice bonus to his leadership. Otherwise, he might have been breaking at this point. Down to just 400 health, not doing too good for him. The remnants of these spear units are really holding back the enemy, allowing the Outriders to get some good value, and the big burst damage coming from the Warrior Priest is pretty glorious stuff. The Ushopti Summoner has been surrounded by Spearmen, which is an engagement they don't really want to take, because all that animation there is pretty crazy. But yeah, they don't really want to take this fight. They're not going to be getting good value. They need to realistically be shutting down some key targets, surrounding characters, or shutting down the Silver Bullets and handguns. The Tomb King's cavalry really needs to get moving, especially on this left-hand flank. Nekaharia horsemen need to be chasing down all these routing troops, stopping them from rallying and hunting down the handgunners, because if the Empire are allowed to rally here, they're going to slowly drag this Tomb King formation through the mud. The Holy Wrath of Sigmar has been called down upon it. These Skeleton Spearmen getting some lovely value from the Archlector, although some of these guys were summons, so it might not kind of show up at the end game there, but still getting an impressive amount of kills and kind of breaking the central pocket of the Tomb King's force. In the distance, we can see the glorious Ark in the Black is hunting down some spearmen who actually have the Grand Hammer of Sigmar on them, but that's not going to help them as they do get churned into a bloody mess from these magical wheels and scythes. And Arken's done pretty good considering that early kind of trap he found himself in. He needs to be careful though, the Halberdiers once again on the hunt. The good micro from the Tomb King player is going to pull him back into the relative safety of his own lines. Although his own lines are starting to dawdle at this point, as the Tomb Prince once again goes toe-to-toe with the Arch-Lector. Now, Ushopti have engaged in hand-to-hand combat to try and help drag him down, but a Grand Shield of Faith and the Mace active, he is given as good as he gets as explosions burst all around him, but he is untouched by the fire, instead raining down fury upon this prince. And just as I say that, it looks like a Spirit Leech is going to come in and perhaps finish him off here as he is starting to break. And he is gone, so I just picked him up for him to be destroyed, as the Tomb Prince should be able to chase him off the battlefield relatively effectively. Balance power, though, is slightly in the Empire favour, and some Empire Knights do come in with a intercept, trying to save their Liege Lord, who at this point maybe will rally. Minus 14 leadership isn't great and only 200 health, but with the balance power in his favour, there's a good chance he can turn around. Outriders with grenade launchers are still shooting shots in. I'm not sure who at the moment, currently just into the open playing field. The other War Priest is doing relatively good as well, but it looks like a couple of units were forgotten by the Tomb King's player. Particularly these Horsemen could have been really vital at key points during the battle, but they do come in for a lovely rear attack on the Outriders, going to be taking them out. So perhaps it was a deliberate tactical reserve left in the back ranks there. But balance power is going hugely in favour of the Empire here, as the Ushopti do get dragged down by Halberdiers. It looks like Arken was finished off as well. Not sure who by, but I'm sure he went down in glory. It looks like actually he was probably just pulled apart by some pesky Halberdiers, which isn't quite so fun. The War Priest is going to be surveying the battle, but at this point I think it's it's basically nailed on to be the force of the Empire. Looks like there's just those horsemen and spearmen who came to the fight a little bit late, and even with the Arch-Lector so low, and if they assassinated him, they'd simply get dragged down by the glorious state troops, and this unit of Outriders still had plenty of ammunition left on them to rain in holy fire if they needed to. So a Pyrrhic victory for sure, though not too many forces left on the Empire's side. Anyway guys, hope you did enjoy this battle. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer action. We're also having a live stream today. It is the finals of Death Before Dishonor Season 6. So we have 4 champions coming together to try and fight over a prize pool. So it should be some good fun stuff. Starting at 6:30 PM at British Standard Time. So yeah, go feel free to check that out. Anyway, as for the forces here, Stormrunner coming in with the Priest build, which is pretty exciting stuff all round, and a nice fire theme, at least with his characters. And as you can see, not the greatest damage value on the Warrior Priests, but they are relatively cheap. In fact, the basic Warrior Priests outshining the Arch-Lector there, but they also bring a lot to the battlefield in their buffs, encouraging the nearby troops and making them fight all that harder and giving them some nice resistance. So I like the combination of them. You don't need to go too expensive with your Lord choices. The Fire Wizard did okay, didn't do anything too crazy. I didn't see any big fat burning heads come down, but fireball damage into Arken does slowly start to add up and really helps drag down the Prince of Darkness over there. Apart from that, the Spearman did a pretty good job just holding the line with the Halberdiers, and then we can see the handgun has got some fantastic value, over 1,000 damage on the silver bullets, damage value, sorry, and over 3,500 damage dealt on the other unit of handgunners, certainly having a big impact on the game. And these Outriders, despite the fact they kind of got caught up in combat a little bit and dragged down quite a few of their own models, they managed to disengage and then continue firing back in, getting some glorious damage value on this one, 1,400 from a relatively cheap unit there. Quite expensive for a skirmish cav unit, but they do huge burst damage to make up for that. So good stuff by the Empire, and I'm a big fan of that formation as well, almost like that wedge or the head of a diamond or triangle, whatever you want to call it, or an arrow I suppose. But yeah, to kind of push people out wide onto those spears and help protect the centre a little while longer. As for the forces of the Tomb King, I think Priest did a pretty good job. Arken still getting 2,000 damage value, despite the fact he got trapped early on, and not losing his head too early and kind of just straight rushing in. The Ushopti, despite early losses, managed to get some good value on those bad boys, at least particularly on this unit on the left, taking down the Hammer of Witches and then firing consistently. I think a big loss though was losing the Necropolis Knights early, charging them straight down the gullet and into the throat of that Empire force, opened them up to the handgun of pressure, and he couldn't get anything into the back to shut them down quick enough, despite Arken and the Tomb Prince's best attempts. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.